And we are live with our 78th episode of Absolute AppSec. I'm Ken Johnson at CK Tricky on Twitter, joined by my co-host Seth Law at Seth Law on Twitter and at Seth Law in real life.
Whatever.
Welcome. Seth, say hi.
There we go. That's my cue. Got it. Hey, everybody. Welcome again. This is number 78. I don't know when Ken and I started this thing, if we ever thought we'd get this high. It probably was like, hey, this is going to happen for, 3 or 4 episodes and we're going to be done. But thankfully, we're still here. We're still talking. We've got no guests this week. Right. So it's just Ken and I. You're going to have to bear with us and, listen to our rantings about all things AppSec. That should be why you're here. If it's not, then there's probably other podcasts for you. So, yeah, we'll just go with that. Let's see. As far as announcements go, before we dive into it, Ken and I will both be at DevSecOps Days Austin. Next week on Monday, we'll be doing a live version of the podcast. I think it's going to be over lunch, if I understood the schedule correctly, but I'm not sure about that, as attendees are eating or whatever. So, if you're going to be there, come say hi. We'll have stickers at the very least. I don't know about shirts yet, Ken. They're supposedly on their way, so that one's kind of up in the air. We may even have a special edition shirt that we're going to share out as well. I think that's about it. I will be at B-Side San Francisco in February as well. I'm going to do a secure code review workshop is what I'm calling it instead. It's basically a come find bugs workshop. So it'll be a little different than our traditional training. And I know people are asking about the secure code review course. Watch our space, watch absoluteappsec.com or the @absoluteappsec Twitter account. We'll tweet out as soon as we know where we're going to be giving that next. I've had a couple people reach out to me on Twitter. I'm sure Ken has as well. We're just locking that down for 2020. 2019 was really busy for both of us, so I think we got kind of burned out, and so we haven't submitted quite as much toward the ends of this year.
Quite as much, you mean not at all?
Not at all. Yes. I think I've submitted once in the last, couple, in the couple weeks. So, we did a lot more last year. Anyway, it will be coming. We'll loop back around. We'll do iteration number 2 of that. So, I don't think. Do you have any other announcements, Ken?
Nope. Just no. Yeah, nothing whatsoever. I mean. Well, so let's get into it. You were at Cactus Con. Was Justin with you? Justin Larson?
Yes.
Oh, yeah, he was. Yeah. Did he get chicken fingers again?
Only like 3 times.
For those that don't realize, like we last time we were at Cactus Con together, maybe 2018, I think, September 2018. Yeah. Justin Larson goes to get order food, and he ordered like chicken tenders at like a decent place, and it's just funny. We've been giving him crap ever since. Yeah, so
I mean, if anybody wants to get Phantom Traveler or Justin any presents, just chicken fingers, chicken fingies, there you go.
It's such a thing when you've got kids too, that you like kind of default to that, I feel.
Yeah, you don't even realize it, right? It's just like, oh, yep, because I'm going to be eating them anyway, or they're going to eat. Yeah, anyway.
I mean, it becomes normal. It becomes the normal thing to do. But he has not lived it down ever since. I mean, not once since has he lived that down. So any chance we get to, we need to put his Twitter handle on here so we can have people spam him with pictures of their chicken tendies.
Okay.
You can't even call them chicken tenders. They got to be chicken tendies.
Chicken tendies.
Yeah, or chicken fingies to make it less adult. Yeah. So, anyways, back to Cactus Con, which is an awesome conference, and for those that don't know, it's in Phoenix. Hence the cactus part of that. Andrew Wilson, his wife, and some other cool folks all come together, and it's only grown year after year. It's a really fun one. It's not like just AppSec. It's like everything security, and it was the first place that I ever got to solder, which I really appreciate them having like an intro to soldering course there, or like course, but like people table set up and equipment and everything. So anyways, that's CactusCon. Seth, tell us about your experience.
Yeah, that's Heatsink Labs, like a makerspace down in Phoenix. Or actually, I don't think they're in Phoenix. I think they're in Mesa, but whatever. Because we wandered by the actual like in the storefront. But Heatsink Labs is the one that typically does that. There was some disappointment this year because the badges didn't show up in time, right? So for the whole soldering stuff, I know Andrew was pretty disappointed about it, that they didn't have the electronic banded badges. They ordered them from China and they just didn't show up. And so they only had paper badges. So that wasn't quite as busy this year. I also think this year I didn't feel quite as packed as it did last year. I don't know if it was just the days of the week that it was happening, or the fact that it's December as opposed to, what was it? I think it was September when we were down there last year, or October. But it was still a great conference. There was a lot of interesting talks going on. Jack Daniels gave one of the keynotes, as did Whitney Champion gave the other one. Shortick Stack on Twitter. I mean, they had interesting things to say. Those keynotes are always interesting. They don't typically dive as deep, right, as some of the other talks. There was a couple of good talks that we went to on. I mean, one was Unfurled, just kind of like data. URL analysis is realistically what it boils down to, right? Like parsing out a URL and all the components that are in it, and a tool that will do that graphically for you and actually identify things like, hey, this is the version of the UID that's in this URL, and it tells you this about the timestamp and other things. But they did a whole bunch of analysis of like Google URLs, like search URLs and other things. It was pretty interesting to see them all graphed out. Let me see. I'll find a link for that one.
So it's like, is it trying to do that securely, picking out those components, or?
No, it's more for a forensic style activity, right?
Okay. Did I distract you? Sorry.
Yeah, you did.
Sorry, not sorry.
Oh man, yeah, there you go.
Send all your chicken fingy pics to Justin.
And he just jumped in too, and he's like, oh crap, I'm like 3 minutes behind, and he's getting shit. Yeah. You better catch up quick, otherwise this could go badly for him.
Yeah.
What was I talking about? Oh yeah, Unfurl.
You're talking about URL parsing for forensic purposes.
Yeah. So the speaker actually works for Google, and their data forensics team. So it's something that they've put together about like the parsing out URLs, and actually anything that's in the URL it'll attempt to analyze. So things as simple as taking a timestamp, like from a 1534 whatever number, and actually reversing that to your current timestamp. So you could actually see, oh, there's multiple timestamps in this URL. One is for the access time and all the other stuff. And yeah, apparently like Twitter or Slack's going crazy. So that one was interesting. There was also a Combi tool that we went to a talk on. Let me post that one really quick.
Okay.
It was good as well. Yeah, I'll throw you that one.
I'll post
this one actually made for easier analysis. Like it's structural code search is what's going on with it, but it's like a smart regex for code searching is what it boils down to. So you can do things like, hey, you see, something in C that's like a printf statement, right? Is it bounds checked before it actually gets to that point, or strcat? So you can do like before and after checks in the code for the surrounding structure around dangerous calls. Right? So I mean, that was and both of these were like 20-minute talks, right? I was like, crap, they should have gone longer, but it is what it is. And then I'd like to, there was a number of other interesting things. There were some talks on phishing and other things. Those were the ones that were most relevant to us, at least in the AppSec space, right? They again, it's such a wide conference. There was only 2 tracks. 3 tracks. I guess Logic Hill was there on Saturday too and spoke, Stephen Edwards, but we were out by the time he actually got around to speaking. So he was late on the day on Saturday. I felt bad.
Yeah, I'm sure you would have liked to met up with him too.
Yeah, I mean,
we need to have him back on. We haven't had him on in a while.
Yeah, I know. It's been a fair bit. You know, I'm still, you know, looking up all the terms on Google that he mentioned last time, though. So once I get through with that, I need a new list.
He was, I mean, well, you know, like his trail, because we did that in Vegas where we did the recap of their Trail of Bits Kubernetes report. And yeah, like he pretty much, I think, got really busy after that. So in a good way, like that really blew up, that whole assessment that they did in that report. And he's done, what was the most recent thing he was doing? He was doing something else, like digging into something else, and I can't remember what it was, something more recent. I don't know, my memory's shit right now. It's the holidays.
I don't know.
It's something else he's working on recently, but I don't remember.
Let's see if I can make up a term that sounds symbolic execution.
Runtime Kubernetes secrets. I don't know.
Yeah, there you go.
Sounds legit.
I don't know. Okay, so I did, like, we did meet up on Saturday morning, and I talked with him for a bit. One of the things that we were actually, you know, talking through though was, I mean, Kubernetes is pretty hot right now, just from everybody's talking about it, and like, I don't know, I'll kind of die on that space that Kubernetes is not really I mean, containers, yes, it's related to AppSec, but it's not really AppSec, right? But whatever. The other thing that we ran into with it though is the fact that people ask him all the time, oh, can we just get your configuration for Kubernetes, you know, working at Trail of Bits? And he's like, guys, at Trail of Bits, we don't run Kubernetes, right?
No, you have a very specific need.
There's no reason to. It's like everyone's jumping on the Kubernetes train, just like they jumped on the blockchain train or anything else, right? Just because it's this new hot technology without really thinking about, hey, do I have a need for this level of complexity and microservices and containerization? Or, you know, can I just run this in an EC2 instance and I'm going to be fine, right? I feel like there's a lot of people going that route when there's not necessarily a need. And there's very few organizations that have that level of, you know, requirement, I guess. I
feel like that's where the discussion is going, is like, well, because in security, you're hearing more about it, but in the developer landscape, they're hearing about it in an opposite way, where they're like, you probably don't need to use it. I mean, I've seen that a lot. I mean, mostly on Twitter, to be fair, which is where I get all of my solid news. It's where you can trust what people are saying. It's a very it's good for mental health. You get great news, accurate facts out of Twitter. It's all around a really good place to be. Sarcasm aside, yeah, like developers are, or I shouldn't even say developers, I should say like site reliability engineer / ops people are like, you probably don't need to use it. You probably don't. Like it was a thing that came out. Google built it for their specific needs. A lot of people latched onto it, like you're saying, and they're like, you probably don't need it. You more than likely can outsource a lot of that work to the services that are already built in the cloud versus like doing your own, your own management of Kubernetes and all that crap. So,
well, and part of the reason that came up is one of the vulnerabilities that Stefan found in his report, right, or in the Kubernetes report. Actually, that Combi tool they used and like recreated, like found the same thing, basically, like one of the buffer overflows that they pulled out of there. So
nice.
But yeah, I don't know. I think in general we have a lot of that, right, in the industry where we latch on to tools and products and, you know, whatever is hot because people are talking about it on Twitter, that reliable source of information, and we implement before we necessarily think through what whether or not it's good for us or good for our organization or even needed.
I mean, there are people. So like, there's two things too with that. Like, there are security people, such as the folks we're going to go talk to next week, like James Wickett and Karthik and whatnot, that are, because they're involved in like the DevOps, and they know about this stuff ahead of the rest of the security community. But like, besides those folks, it's also like this game where security is always catching up to what's being utilized a couple years after it's utilized. It's been, you know, like in production and utilized and become a thing. So it's I don't know. I feel like we're always a little bit behind the curve. I mean, it is a bit different when you work on like a blue team operational kind of work for certain companies that, you know, are implementing these things. But so speaking of, this is a good, or like, is there more that anything else interesting from CactusCon that you want? You did the workshop there, or no?
No. This was the first conference that I've been to in a long time that I didn't actually, you know, speak or do a workshop or anything. We just went down and went to talks. Hallway con's always good, right? You know, so running into, you know, I had a chance to talk to Whitney Champion. I mean, she did the keynote, but she's also the one that started up the Hacker Tracker, the Android version.
Yeah, you worked with her. I mean, yeah, you did the iOS version. She did the Android.
Yep. So we worked very close.
Huh? Sorry, I keep interrupting. You know what? You can blame it on too much caffeine.
Oh, she was talking like the. I mean, she's been doing a lot of blue team stuff, right? She helps run that OpenSOC CTF, which is the blue team CTF, right? So the blue team village at DEF CON, they were running that same CTF at CactusCon as well. I just like I didn't get involved with it this time around, right? Just was talking to too many people. I had too much going on.
Mr. Popularity.
Yeah, Mr. I work with a lot of people down there that go to CactusCon, and so it was more, you know, got distracted every 2 seconds. Yeah. So it's like Ken walking out of his house, right? Some of it.
Yeah, super popular with the squirrels outside that steal the bird seed from my bird feeders. But that's a story for a different day.
Well, I'm sure you are. They keep coming back, so.
Yeah. Well, as a side note, the last time we went out there, the squirrel had pulled it off the actual like thing that hang. I don't know how we got into this conversation, but whatever. Like, whatever. I'm a crazy squirrel person. I like to watch them. So they pulled the whole deer with the gun and just like started just munching away on bird seed.
Yeah.
So I don't know how this has any relevance to our AppSec podcast. But the bottom line is, when I leave my house, there's nobody here. So there's nothing. There's animals and like, yeah. I'm just working from home as a hermit, all alone.
Yeah. I don't know. So speaking of, you know, wildlife, right? Did you see that going around on Twitter that somebody's putting cowboy hats on the pigeons in Las Vegas?
No.
And then like you've got like the animal rights, I don't know, people that are trying to like take them off, and so it's like this battle is going. I'll find a link.
Oh my God.
It's totally not related to AppSec, and that's apparently where we're going today, but it was, yeah.
We have some topics, but it's just loose. It's just, these are just loose topics. Yeah, there's been some fun. I mean, yeah, actually I'm more interested in that story, but we'll diverge back to InfoSec. There were a few things that were of note and interest, especially like last week. And there's stuff that happened this week even. And but I don't think we'll have time to get into it. But from last week, the interesting things were like first of all, there was the HackerOne bit where
yes.
they called it a breach. Well, I'm not saying HackerOne called it a breach. It was just called a breach in general on the internet. And so to recap on that, I don't have a link. I can find one, but Like what had happened was one of the researchers, this is just what I got in the email, because if you're like working through the HackerOne platform, you know, you obviously get an email about stuff that's going on, but also it's like completely public. So I don't feel like I'm just airing out laundry, privileged information or anything. It's pretty public. But anyways, so the HackerOne platform is also, you know, a platform where you can hack on it. I mean, meaning like they also have a bug bounty for themselves. Someone did that, some researcher. They were working, I guess, with an analyst at HackerOne, and the analyst accidentally pasted their session ID into, I don't know, whatever, probably on the HackerOne platform, you know, to the researcher accidentally. They were working through something else, and the researcher used that session to then just like do stuff they shouldn't have been able to do. And what they found, I think what they found, the security analysts, is that with that session of the security analyst, they were able to access other platforms. Now there's quite a bit to digest from all this, because on the one hand, like, well, not on the one hand, like this is my own opinion. First of all, that's not really like the point of a bug bounty, is not to get somebody to accidentally give you a session and then just like shit all over that privileged information. But whatever, that's what they did, right? That's what I mean. I shouldn't say that's what they did. I should say what they did was they took the session and they went farther than I would have, and they accessed other platform, like other businesses' information on the platform. Now that's the one side of it. The other side of it is that, like, well, that security analyst probably shouldn't have had. There should have been more, you know, more protections in place so that if you do get a session, you can't just like access different companies' information, which is what HackerOne said they took action on, right? Like they took action on a few things. Now, I would not have. I think this person ended up getting paid like $20,000 for this bug bounty, and I think I would have been okay maybe giving them, only because HackerOne, like if they went after this researcher, it would. I mean, it's like not the best thing for a company that runs a bug bounty platform to then go after their own researchers for having disclosed something like this, right? Yeah. However, that hacker, loosely using that term, breached, in my opinion, confidentiality and like exploited sort of that human part of it, which is not necessarily in scope. Also, they access way more data than they need to, from what it sounds like. And now HackerOne has changed their legal verbiage to sort of address that. But I mean, maybe I would have given them a thank you payout probably, but I $20,000 for that just feels a little, I don't have all the details, granted, but it just, anyways, that's sort of, I don't know what your opinion on all this is, Seth, but it just feels a little like,
I mean, this feels very similar to me to that recent Capital One breach, right? Somebody with, I mean, with intimate knowledge, you know, number one, like, so a session credential that they don't, you know, they got through social engineering is realistically what it was, right? So they're using a token that they didn't gain through the system itself, or, you know what I mean? It was through someone else in social engineering, someone that they used that to gain privileged information. And that's exactly what happened on Capital One. Maybe there wasn't some checks around authorization, or the session token didn't time out as quickly as it probably should have, right? So there's definitely things that HackerOne probably could have done in that case, and even Capital One, right? Like other controls that they could have implemented to prevent the amount of data that was breached. In the Capital One case, at least it was like someone malicious that was going after it, right? It wasn't the same sort of thing. It does feel like HackerOne rewarded him for stepping outside the bounds of what they normally allow, right? And I think that's what you're getting at with the, hey, I would have kicked him some thank you money, right? Like, as far as, yeah, you know, but I probably would at the same time would have been like, yeah, but like you did X, Y, and Z, which is also not cool. And so you got to realize that, you know, that's, you know,
it's a weird predicament for them, because if they go after this the way I think most of us kind of, well, I shouldn't say most of us, the way I would feel about it, which is like, are you kidding me? You abuse that trust. If they went after that, like, this is a good point that several people have brought up, was that, yeah, I mean, then it's just, that's their business model. Like it's not a good look for them. if they did. Not, and I'm not saying go after. I just mean like, be like, hey, you weren't supposed to do that. Don't do that again. And sign this thing that says you deleted the information. And like, you know, I wouldn't. I mean, certainly, there's no reason for like legal action, I don't think. But there is a reason to be like, do that again. You're on thin ice right now. Do that again. You know, like, yeah. I think.
Well, and this is exactly so like we always talk about overlaying like security consulting with bug bounty, with other forms of like identifying vulnerabilities. But like I have a hard time coming at it as a consultant, right? Because if I step outside the scope of what I'm doing with a company or with a client, like at that point, I'm not legally covered by anything, right? Like the agreements that I've signed with them, like even like insurance and everything else. Like I'm like, at that point, it's just me, and I'm like liable for whatever happens with that data or whatever else I go after, right? So we're very, very careful with scope, and I know that they push their researchers to be careful about that as well, right? And, you know, so yes, this was HackerOne, and I think that's probably why it made the news. But if you had done this, like if I went trolling and social engineering for one of HackerOne's actually like clients that are on that platform, and then use that to, you know, pull out more data than is necessary or to abuse that company, I'm pretty sure HackerOne's not going to back you up on that, right?
No, not at all. And like, if you've got, imagine, because it's one thing when you talk about corporations, and it's another when you talk about governments that are on the platform, right? Like that. I mean, because if people don't know, like it's not just, you're not seeing just submissions of like, you know, hey, you got some insecure headers or verbose errors or whatever. You're talking about stuff that in some cases are giving like an expert that can steal data, lead to remote code execution. Like there's some pretty, that's why the platform exists, because there's some pretty serious submissions that come through. And I don't know, like it definitely feels different when you think about like I'm not saying, by the way, I have no information on whose information. I know ours wasn't, but I don't know about the other companies, like whose information was accessed, or organizations, I should say. So I don't know if like, I mean, it's probably not a government entity, but what if it was? I guess that's the, like, would that has bigger ramifications, because then it's like, you may not see it as a breach, but certainly they would, right? Like that would dissuade more participation from government entities in bug bounties, which I was surprised that you ever saw the Pentagon have a bug bounty, by the way. So that's a hot topic for another day. But anyways, yeah, it's a little, I don't know. It's
well, and that's, I mean, that's the other thing, like, because it is like from HackerOne's perspective, right? And the clients that data was accessed, it was a breach, right? You know, it wasn't one of their employees' credentials, like the session authentication token got stolen, and the data was accessed and went out of their control, right? Yes, it's to a somewhat limited trusted party, but even then, that data is like, there's no guarantees, right? It's gone.
Right. Yeah. So, and this is anybody off the internet also. So when you say like trusted party, it's like, how trusted, right?
Yeah. They're not doing as much background as some of the other bug bounty people do.
Yeah. So. When you go through what is it called? A requisition process with a company, like you as a consultant first of all, you have to compete against other companies. They do like checks on you. You have to submit all kinds of, I mean, like there's just the paperwork for that's why that's honestly one of the worst parts of being a consultant, is all the requisition and legal crap. Because once you actually get through that, it's like, okay, the rest of it's easy, but that's the part that sucks the most, is that and it's because both parties have to protect themselves. And so like you'll see companies with like overly broad generic statements, and you're like, whoa, I'm not signing it as a consultant. I'm not signing on the dotted line saying if like your system goes down because you can't handle more than 20 threads, that I'm liable, you know. And their paperwork might kind of blanket cover something like that, where you're like, I'm not gonna sign that. You shouldn't, right?
Yeah.
but it's difficult because you're also working again, or I shouldn't say against, but you're competing against other companies, right? To like get that work. So if they sign, there's always that weirdness, like, it's difficult, the whole legal thing with it, but at least it's like thorough, right? They know you're vetted. It's not like you just entered some credential or like signed up on a platform and got to hacking, right? So it's, I don't know, kind of a weird situation.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely unique, right? And it's a little bit more interesting, just from the whole, that the bug bounty platform was breached, right? That's always the.
Ben Toller, by the way, is cracking me up. He put this picture earlier of these I want to like pin this for I'm going to pin this. If you're not in our Slack channel, please hop in there if you can. It's on absoluteappsec.com is the info, the invitation links on there. Because we have some good combos in there and some funny stuff going on. Plus, it's all the links that we've got and any information about upcoming podcasts are in there. So just to plug that real quick. But I don't know, like if there's any other thoughts on that whole thing.
No, not necessarily. I do kind of feel like we're reaching. I know we talked with Jared Gamblin about breach fatigue, right?
Yeah.
I do, like, as a security person, I definitely feel that, right? Especially this last like 6 months to a year, right? There's breaches coming out it feels like every couple of days. And
what about breach insurance?
Oh, breach insurance, right? I mean, basically it pays for, credit monitoring for anyone who is breached. Is that, yeah. Technically.
Basic. Oh yeah, that's true. That is true. From what has been put out there about breach insurance, you're right. It just pretty much covers like those type. Like if you've got to put, if you've got to give people free monitoring, it pays for that, and then it's very like limited to what.
I think it'll do some of the forensics and some of that. Like they'll do some of the, like, it'll pay for figuring out what it is. I'm sure there's different levels. And I mean, at some point we should have some of those people that we know on that are in that insurance industry, or at least working for those guys as the breaches happen, because it would be pretty interesting. As a consultant, I've gotten involved on some of those where they've been breached. The insurance is paying for that, basically trying to figure out who is negligent or who was negligent. Whether it was, the provider or the developers, or how the breach actually happened. And in a lot of those cases, it's just a complete nightmare, right? Like, it's okay, there's 10 different avenues. This code was stood up 10 years ago. No one's maintained it since then. So take your pick, right? Who's actually to blame?
Those are always the weirdest ones too. It's like, how many times have you, as a consultant, like, I know we both have this quite a bit, where it's like someone gets breached, but they don't know how. They didn't have, like, for whatever reason, they didn't have proper audit logs or whatever, and they're just like, here's the code, take a look and tell us how they got in. And you're like, I mean, what? Like, I'll try my best. Okay. I mean, like, what I mean is we're going to look for some, and usually people who are doing that, by the way, when you go to, even if you use just a scanner on their code, it immediately becomes clear, like, oh my God, there's a lot of ways that they could have breached you, for one. But two, like, what makes you think it's the web app, right? And like, well, they got access to data. They shouldn't. Well, there's other ways in the web app for that, right? Yeah. And so it's always weird. I don't know. I always felt weird when people ask me to do that. It's like,
yeah,
I did it. This is going back to a story from a long time ago. I want to say it was like 9 years ago or 8 years ago. There was this nonprofit out of California that like did for youth. They did like outdoorsy things for youth that otherwise couldn't, and it was a good cause. And somebody was like, hey, you do security, and these guys got pwned, and like, can you take a look? Holy crap, man, like, I went through their code base. First of all, it was littered with vulnerabilities. I don't even know where to begin. It was PHP, of course, right? on top of that, there's some super interesting like web shells, but the web shells were all over their code base. It was really nice, like really well done black market type PHP web shells, which I actually did upload to the Nova Hackers GitHub repo. Kind of still up there. But anyways, yeah, like it was that code base was a shit show. It was a mess. And then like, and not, they didn't have resources. They were just like, people were just volunteering to do this for them because it's, not for profit. But yeah, it was crazy, man. They were like, the same web shell was all over the code base. It was insane. So I think they ended up even just like redoing the entire web app from the ground up just because they were so compromised. They had to move off there. They like got on a new hosting platform, built a whole new app. It was just so bad. It was like, there's no coming back from this. Your app's completely burned. Yeah.
That's what I tell people when they want to roll their own WordPress site, right?
Yeah.
It's the same thing, right? That's what always happens is they find an exploit in one of the modules that is being used, and web shells all of a sudden are up everywhere, and they don't know because it was just stood up by some designer, and then it hasn't been maintained or updated since then. And yeah,
it's not WordPress that we're worried about. These stupid plugins that people like. It's no different from like the Android and iOS App Store. It's like if you install this code from somebody else, it's the same concept as dependencies. Even if you think about it, it's like you're installing code from somebody else because like you wanted, I don't know, a neon colored footer. I don't know. I'm just making stuff up. But yeah, they're like, yeah, that's where the issues typically arise, right? I mean, and they've got like, for those that want to know how to fix that, they have plugins that monitor for security issues in plugins, and will alert you if one of your installed plugins are vulnerable. Your O-Day, Ken Toller called it your O-Day blogging platform.
Yep. Yes, it is. I don't know. I mean, that came to light to me. It was. I mean, it's been years, right? Like trying to run just like little WordPress blogs for people, and it was to make management easy. But then like seeing the amount of just like crap that went on and people that were pinging it, and then the second it was WordPress, like all of the different attacks that would go against it, and half of them were O-Days against plugins that people would use that didn't, all that code is open source because it's just PHP and it's interpreted. So they find a vulnerability, they don't report it, they write an exploit for it, they upload web shells, they try to take over hosting providers, and then it just spiders from there, right? It's a pretty common attack pattern. So anyway, I mean, we're completely off on WordPress and PHP now because of something. So
actually, Ken Toller brought up a really good point too, which is like marketing is usually so first of all, he said marketing is usually like the WordPress admin, which is true. Like you have I would say it doesn't matter. Like you have somebody else, not a security person or not a security champion developer, managing that. And like, but that's the point, is that WordPress is also the reason people use that solution is because you can get, instead of an engineer having to sit there and like, we'll say using like a Jekyll site, for instance, instead of an engineer having to edit some markdown or edit some content or whatever and push it up and do all the deploy and all that stuff, you've got marketing who can just log in, make edits as they want, and cool. But also like, if they're the administrator, they can install also whatever they want, which becomes problematic.
Yep.
But yeah, anyway, so we should move on because there's one other thing I really wanted to talk about. I really, really wanted to get into this, which was the Pen Tester Labs. Let me make sure it's Pen Tester Labs so I don't call them out and like nasty emails. Yeah, Pen Test Lab. We post this Twitter thread. So last week, someone tweeted out that they received their password doing, I think I forgot password, or maybe it was during sign up, whatever. They received and it's posted now. Okay. They received sorry, I am struggling to multitask here. Okay, cool. Links are out. So somebody, a user of Pentest Labs sent out that like they got their password which now Pentest Labs is calling a token, emailed to them in a either, like I said, registration or sign. Probably was registration, because the way that the Pentest Labs said they do this is that they do store your password plain text. You don't get to put your password in, though. That's the catch. You don't actually choose
You don't
your
get
own
to
password.
choose one. Yep.
No. They auto-generate it, and it's supposed to be random and all that fun stuff. But they store it in plain text, and I don't even know where to begin with this. So, like, people were kind of pointing out that the InfoSec community was dogpiling on them and not showing a whole lot of empathy and all that stuff. Okay, fair point. But, and nobody's going to like me for saying this, but sometimes that's what I miss about the InfoSec community is like when people do something clearly wrong, like calling them out. Like, why is that so bad? Why? I mean, like, everybody's like, oh, they're dogpiling on them. Well, yeah, but like, it's deserved. I mean, and most of the time I'm like, yeah, don't do that. Don't dogpile, don't whatever. But like sometimes, and maybe it's because it's, I don't know, maybe I'm more curmudgeonly today than usual, but sometimes when you deserve it, you deserve it. And their whole thing was they were claiming that like, for the first response was like, in our defense, we think it's stronger, which is fair. If we generate your password, then like it's easier for you to, it's easier for you to screw that up if you do it than if we do it, which is like why people integrate with Have I Been Pwned, and have like validations for common passwords and don't allow you to, or like at least warn you when you sign up. The way Segment did it, the way Leaf explained it. So their threat model from Pentester Labs was like, well, if we're generating it, it's less likely to be compromised, and like there's a small chance your password ever gets leaked. And if it does, well, there's not a whole lot of data stored in the database. Like the only thing stored is an email, which can be anonymous, which I don't really understand why like that's okay. And then whether or not you paid, and then I don't know, there's like some other innocuous sort of thing. So, I mean, I get why they're saying that to a degree, but they're saying like, well, first of all the verbiage around their explanation was always describing like the password as being encrypted, as like normal systems always encrypt. And FYI, not to be like pedantic here, but no, most sites are hashing, not encrypting your password. But while I get their point, I think the issue is that, well, there's several, but you're a pen testing lab company or security company, and as security companies, or as a security company, and this holds true, I think, for any security company, you like want to hold the same standards for yourself as you do for everybody else. Mm-hmm. I get what they're trying to say, and I understand that people, like, you shouldn't outright be mean. I don't agree. I don't stand for that at all. But I think it's completely reasonable for the InfoSec community to say, don't do that. Like, that's not the right way to do it. Don't do that. So what are your thoughts? That's my opinion. What do you think?
Yeah, like I'd be interested, like if you look at Pentest Labs, like the courses that they have, like I would be interested to see what they say about authentication, right? And handling of passwords. Just like, are they being hypocritical, or is it just they did a risk assessment and decided that, oh, this was the easiest way around it, and then we don't have to ever regenerate passwords? Because that's what it feels like, is they don't regenerate that password. No. So if you forget the password, or if it gets shared, like it almost feels like it becomes an easier way for people to share their tokens or share their passwords. Like if somebody's credentials get compromised, the threat is that anybody can access that account and actually view the content, right? And I guess if they don't care about that, I mean, that's their own, that's their own problem. But at the very least, right, implementing something that even if you generate the password and you show it to them the first time, or you show it to them on a screen, or have like some JavaScript that randomly generates a password and stores it that first time, whatever, it's not that hard to do reset. Like, we understand how to do this securely. So it feels like a shortcut that they're trying to justify.
That's what I agree with that, man. I feel like actually your summary makes a lot more sense, the way you said it than the way I said it. because that's what I feel like it is too. Like it was an easy thing to do. It was like, well, it's probably fine, you know. Okay, fine, but like, don't be mad when people say, yeah, you were, like you say, kind of it's kind of like a shortcut. You were, let's be honest, you were kind of lazy about it. Like that's just the only, that's just, you can say whatever you want, justify anything you want. You're a little lazy about it. It's fine, like that. But at least own it and don't get mad when people are like, because they said we were disappointed in the InfoSec community. I'm like, yeah, but I'm not. Like, I mean, I'm disappointed in anyone who's mean. Well, I want to be very clear about that. If you're mean and you're rude, there's no reason for that. This is just computer stuff. Look, it's not the end of the world. And especially with pen tester labs, like even if your shit gets breached, it's not the end of the world. It's not that big of a deal. And I know that as an InfoSec, we always say huge deal. This is really not that big of a deal. However, like, so don't be mean about it. But yeah, it's okay to say, no, not okay. That's not the right way to do it. You're not doing it the right way. You're a security company and you took the shortcut and like now you're kind of you're getting some flack for it. Just own it. Don't be so upset about it. Don't say you're disappointed in the community over it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I know Ken Toller again brought this up on Slack that OSCP does something similar. Again, that's for their labs and their VPN, right?
Yep.
So, like some of that I understand, just from a technical perspective, and I know there's other places that'll do this as well. As you're getting a VPN into our my network, and then I'm going to give you access to things. So I'm going to give you I'm going to generate a username and password because I can control those credentials as they're coming in. It's we don't have an automated system or whatever. I'm pretty sure that OSCP does. Offensive Security, I'm sure, does have an automated system. But part of that is that those tokens that they give you as far as username and passwords typically aren't like your email address isn't one of those tokens, right? It's just like there's no way to pull that back out. If you've got it, yes, you can access the VPN, but the second that your lab time runs out, they're going to cut that VPN access. Those credentials expire. They are random on both username and password, so the tokens. It just is it. Yeah, so there is some justification there, and there's some ways that that's happened in the past. I don't know, man. But again, it's ease of use, right? I'm making this a little bit easier on myself to administer things.
Right. And that's fine. That's a perfectly reasonable response to say, like, look, this is just, an easy thing to do. And there's not that much, we don't feel like which is basically what they said about the second part, where it's like, oh, we don't feel there's that much at risk. It's basically what they said, which is probably true. I mean, they like I said, I mean, it's an email address and it's like if you made your $50 payment or whatever, and like, I'm reiterating this because I know Ken Toller had asked, and I hope I'm answering what the question he's asking, but it was like, what are they claiming that they're protecting? And that's what they say they're protecting. It's like 3 pieces of innocuous information is what they said, 3 or 4, which is like, yeah, again, the email address, the whether or not you paid. I don't even think they're doing progress. I don't know. Maybe it doesn't really matter. I mean, but again, like, I mean, there's no reason for us to get into all the reasons why, like, the industry has a very good reason for usually hashing, by the way, passwords, not fucking encrypting them. Yeah. Anyways, like, yeah, I guess if you're generating it for your user. Anyways, so I just thought that whole thing was crazy because it was like, yeah, I do agree that it's not cool to be mean, especially like in the age of, oh my God, these days, I don't know about you, but I can't even spend much time on Twitter anymore. I've actually turned off notifications on my phone, so I don't see a lot of that. Like when I have to go into Twitter to actually see tweets and stuff like that, just because. And I'm about to do this with Facebook too, and just go on like a whole hiatus with that because people are just getting. I feel like I'm not sure if it's people are getting more mean to each other, or if it's the algorithms they use to push more engagement is seeing that people are having strong reactions to like things, which is typically too negative posts and stuff like that, and then you're pushing that into your visibility. We all know, like Twitter's timeline, for instance, and I'm not picking on Twitter, I'm just saying as one example with Twitter, that they now decide what, unless you like going and changing your preference, they decide what you're going to see first. It's not like a straight up like this person tweeted, the first in, first out type deal. It's not like that anymore. It is, well, I guess it'd be last in, last out, right? Whatever. Like they choose, and Facebook does the same thing, and all social media's platforms at this point are doing that. They're pushing engagement, and unfortunately, toxicity plays a big part in engagement. And so it's getting to the point where it's like, I wonder if these platforms are going to end up finding themselves in a spot where people just stop using because they're sick of being depressed over, you know, the shitty way that people are behaving.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know, right? Like, I'm with you. Like, I don't necessarily like there's stuff that I monitor on Twitter, and I'm looking for specific like research and news, and you know, anything that's super toxic, you know, I try not to engage on. And you know, I like, but I don't know where else to get that same level of kind of research. Like InfoSec lives on Twitter, right? The research community does. Yeah. And so piling on because somebody did something crappy, I think it went back and forth, right? It was the initial kind of like, you know, the guy that found the Pentester Labs issue was like, oh, you guys suck, right? You know what I mean? And so they responded negatively as well. And then everybody else piled on, whereas it probably could have been more of a real discussion about threat and risks and why things happen. Like there's just, with social media in general, it doesn't feel like there's a lot of adults in the room, right? And that's just it. We're standing behind anonymous things. Like, I mean, you and I are pretty public, right? Like, as far as, hey, we are who we are on Twitter and in real life. But I think there's a lot of people that kind of, you know, generate a persona of being elites or whatever on Twitter, and that's what they live with, right? I think there's a lack of kind of genuine commentary and genuine life, you know, on the platforms, because everyone wants to put out their best face, which I get as well, because, you know, you want the likes, you want the, you know, the retweets, and you want the, especially if it
affects you professionally, right? Because if you were to go on there right now and say something that, I don't know, like not like super horrible, but, you know, maybe polarizing or something like that.
It could affect me.
Certainly, yeah. Especially because you run your own consultancy, your own business. You know, you are your business. So yeah, you do kind of have to like. I'm
pretty measured about it. Yeah.
Yeah, but to be fair, I've known you for like over a decade now, and you're like the same. You're measured in all parts of your life. I mean, you're just like that. Period. People don't know you as well as I do, but you're very like. I don't actually now that I bring this up, I don't know if I've ever seen you get like my level of pissed off. Like, you know what I mean? Where if I'm really pissed off, like it's very visible on the outside. For you, I don't think I've ever actually seen you get like that. I mean, you've talked about like, oh, I was mad about this or whatever. But it's even then, it's like I feel like you're academically breaking down like your emotions. You know what I mean? Like you're. Yeah. It's not a persona.
You can't get too high. You can't get too low, right? Like that's.
Yeah. You're pretty even kill all the time. You're probably one of the most even kill people I've ever met.
So. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that, but yeah, I don't know. Like, it's just how I deal with it. I don't know if it's necessarily the best way a lot of times, right? Because if something really eats at me, I stew about it for days and days rather than just blowing up about it and then getting it over with, right? Yeah. Anyway,
well, so having been the person that does that, blow up about stuff, I can tell you it's probably I'm not a hothead, but yeah, certainly between the two of us, I'm the hothead. But yeah, no, I mean it's not. It is better to be. And like actually, Ken Toller mentioned the Jocko podcast. And if you ever read, I have the book around here. If you've ever read Extreme Ownership, and if you've ever listened to Jocko's stuff, one of the things he talks about, which I really like, is the idea that losing your temper is a weakness, that if you just anything that you're not disciplined in if like whether it's like sleeping in too late, or if it's like eating that junk food, or if it's like, losing your temper, it's a weakness. You're not in control, and if you're not in control, then it's a weakness, and it's fine to admit it and then address it.
Yeah,
and you're in control of it. So
yeah,
which is fine.
Well, but I mean, going back to like Twitter and social media, right? That's there's a lot of hot takes that people don't put thought into, right? And that's part of it, is like they're not necessarily in control. Like they are, because they're typing it out, but they're not in control of their responses to what they're seeing out there. And that's what I'm saying. That's what I was talking about with people piling on, is there's not a lot of real discussion and thought around the risks, around the threats. And it's difficult as it is, the way that stream comes in, because it's not geared toward thoughtful academic discussion of threats. It's not, right? It's geared towards hot takes and popularity and, like it's just the algorithms of social media. That's what they want, is they want that engagement, just like you were saying. And so people engage when they're frustrated, or they're indignant about something and they're just going off. They don't necessarily engage when it's something that is already probably pretty well thought out. So,
yeah. Yep. No, that's exactly how I feel about it. It's just, I think in 2020, I never have a resolution. I don't really do that, because like, it's whatever. Like, why wait? Just do whatever the thing is that you want to do now. But I definitely think in 2020, like one focus I want to have is just like paring down to like ignoring, like staying away from that kind of stuff, basically. Staying away from that stuff. And sticking to the things that will be more positive. And I hope that more people kind of take that stance, so that the social media platforms kind of get dinged on pushing that negative shit to the top. Because I really hope that I just wish it was the reverse, right? Like the helpful research that people put out, the cool burp, plugins or tools or whatever that people are writing, like that stuff should get more attention. And speaking of, by the way, I need to post a link, because one of our viewers, Caleb, gave us a link to a burp suite extension to manage your repeater tabs. And I think, and like I mean, this kind of goes along the lines, things like this, where people are just trying to like have little side projects that are cool and helpful. That stuff should get promoted more, and less about like the drama. Although it's fun to talk about it on this podcast, so whatever. Yeah. I'm a hypocrite.
Whatever. Well, I mean, to swing back around on that, right? Like James Kettle, right? Portswigger, at Portswigger, or at Albino Wax, right? The stuff he just released an update to the HTTP request smuggler, right? Also along those lines, it just got posted, I think, yesterday, right?
Let's see this, yeah.
And he does get retweeted quite a bit, because he has been so prolific, and Portswigger has supported that research and actually pushing those boundaries in like both the bug bounty and the general assessment community space, and making burp more useful for actually finding vulnerabilities. So that's cool.
Sweet. I see the link. It's on Twitter. I'll to Portswigger's site. I'll post that right now.
Okay.
Sweet.
Yeah, but I haven't checked out that plugin from Caleb yet, but it looked pretty good. It's fourth quarter, right, for me. So.
Yeah, I meant to do it, but it's not a fourth quarter thing for me. But work was busy too. Like, it's just been busy. So, yep, it's just that time of year.
Cool.
I'm excited about next week. I don't think we've decided on the platform, because we're going to go to. You mentioned at the beginning, we're going to go to Austin. We're going to DevSecOps Days. James, Wicket, Karthik, Ernest. Those folks are putting it on, and And so like we're going to go during lunchtime on stage, I think, and do, I'm not sure, like we're just going to do like a little bit of Q&A, discuss, maybe have some interesting topics that conference that are specific to that conference, that we maybe have like a panel, talk about. I don't think we've really, we're going to have a call, I think, in the next couple of days to figure that out. It sounds like,
Yeah.
But yeah, like it should be interesting. We've never done this, so this will be our first time doing a live podcast at a conference on the stage.
Yeah, it should be fun, right? You know, like we'll see. I mean, at the very least, we could just pull up, you know, Wicket and Karthik and some of those other guys and do our normal, like, what's going on? What do you see? All right. But we'll figure it out. So stay tuned for that. That's going to be next Monday. That'll be noon Central Time, I believe.
Yeah. So by my math, that's 2 days into the future.
Yeah. So that's 11.
I don't know how time zones work.
I think it's 11 Eastern, or no, 1 Eastern, 11 Mountain, 10 Pacific. Next Monday we'll be on, and we'll be broadcasting live from DevSecOps Days Austin.
Yeah, I'm stoked about it.
Yeah, it should be fun. Yeah, we're gonna have a cool live radio show set up. Like Ken Toller is gonna sponsor us on it. Right, we'll bring the fancy mics and everything.
And Ken Toller is gonna be there with Mike McCabe as well. It's like gonna be really, yeah, I'm excited. It's gonna be like kind of catching up with friends and folks that we haven't gotten to catch up with in a while. So it's gonna be pretty cool.
Yep. Nice. Cool. Well, good. Yeah. Well, we've been going for an hour, Ken.
Oh, obviously. Yeah. I guess we can wrap this up then.
I mean, unless we got any other topics that you want to cover quickly today.
We covered everything. Yeah, it's fun catching up with you too. I don't know if people realize, but sometimes you and I get so busy. This is like the only time we have a chance to catch up. So this is kind of nice too, just to chat.
Yeah, chat, get each other's hot takes on stuff for sure. I'm trying to think. Please follow us on Twitter. I'll get this podcast ripped and back on the site as well. You can subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Google Play, Spotify. I can't even remember all of them that we signed up for anymore. But if you have another platform that you want the podcast on, please let us know. If you got some other app that you're interested in streaming things on, we'd be more than happy to enroll and get it all set up. So I mean, we will have a site update coming too. I know Ken and I have been talking about that, actually putting the blog together and a couple of other things as far as like upcoming episodes, because I know we don't do a good job of advertising those before, the morning of the episode itself.
Yeah.
So part of that'll, the site should alleviate it.
The other thing I was going to mention is that people can, if there's somebody you want to see us bring on the podcast, or if there are topics you want covered, you can send that to absoluteappsec@gmail.com. I can say it again. I don't think it's hard to remember. It's absoluteappsec@gmail.com. Yeah, I just wanted to add that in.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining today. Find us on Twitter, find us on Slack, whatever your preferred method of communication is, and we'll see everybody next week.
Thank you for later.